Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the long-running Rates and Lanes podcast with your host, Rico Muhammad, and your co-host, Chuck Snow. We're glad you could join us this evening. I'm doing the opening salvo because for some reason, Rico's technology doesn't work very well doing the opening salvo, so I'm doing it. So with no further ado, our host, Rico Muhammad. How are you, Rico?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Chuck. That's a great opening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. We greatly appreciate it. If you guys would do us a huge favor before we get going, please like, share, and subscribe to the show. It helps us out tremendously. Maybe tell a friend to tell a friend, share the show so that we can get out to a broader audience. And with that being said, and without much further ado, jumping right into the proceedings this evening, we want to talk about the current fuel index. We're showing that fuel prices from the previous week are down overall by 4 cents, showing a national average for U.S. diesel prices at $3.71 per gallon. So that's good news. We're saving a little bit of money when it comes to that end of the spectrum. I'm trying to get my technology to come up so that I can share with you guys the national spot market averages over the previous week. But right now, I'm just getting you know anything about technology, I'm getting the spinning pinwheel of death right now. So it's not showing me anything, but as soon as that comes up, maybe we'll circle back around to that. A lot of stuff is in the news this week. One surprising thing that I'm hearing from a lot of content creators in the space is we are kind of experiencing a little bit of a spike in the spot market as far as pricing is concerned, and they are all pointing the finger at the non-domiciled driver actually having a little bit more of an effect than what a lot of people may or may not have anticipated. And so you're starting to see some blips on the spot market where you're starting to see some serious spikes where rates are concerned. Would really be interested to hear the audience's take and what are you guys seeing out there real time. We would really like to know your kind of what's your take on that whole piece as far as the rates and what do you think is causing the spike? Also, Chuck, so that right now, that's all I got on this end while I'm waiting on the rate information to come up, but I'm not sure if it is, so I might have to go to another source, but go ahead.
Rico, before we were in the green room warming up, I mentioned a couple of things that were on my chest here.
Yes.
And first being, on Friday, I got a call. A lot of the carriers somehow get my phone number, which I don't mind. I don't actually give it out, but people get it. It's out there. And I got a phone call from a distraught carrier that traffics my former company had given a load to. And they were totally upset with the way things had gone on a shipment. Now, I did not know these people, but, I always feel bad for carriers. My sympathies, especially in the last few years, have really gone with the carriers. I know they're having a tough time. So I intervened, only to find out at the end of the day that the carrier had not read what was in the carrier confirmation. And this was not hidden in fine print. Fine print is fine print. We all understand that. And the devil's in the details.
Absolutely.
So I wouldn't fault them if something was hidden somewhere in fine print, but this was not the case. It was a case of them not reading the load confirmation. So if I can just have a word with our listeners, when you get load confirmations, for God's sakes, take a minute and read them word for word, because there's information on there that is going to make the difference between a successful experience and a non-successful experience. So just read, and if there's something on there that doesn't make sense, then call up the broker and ask them, what the hell's going on here? How do you expect me to drive 500 miles in 3 hours? Come on, or whatever it is. So, but you've got to read the confirmation. Now, brokers will screw up too. And if the broker puts something in there incorrect, then call them out on it. That's fair. But you got to protect yourself. And if you don't read the details and you sign off on it, that meant when you sign off on something, this is just a reminder. When you sign off on something, that means you have signed off on it, you've read it, and you've understood it. So please, for God's sakes, take a minute and read the carrier confirmation. So make sure you understand it. And if somebody helps you get through something, for God's sakes, pick up the phone and thank them. That's common courtesy. Do that as well. Carrier, I did work with them, got them what they needed, even though they didn't read the confirmation. So when somebody does help you, just pick up the phone and say, hey, thank you. It goes a long way. While I'm on my soapbox here today, there's something else that I do want to mention.
Well, before keep your thought, Chuck, but I want to kind of unpack that first piece a little bit.
Okay.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the carrier called you. He knew that you were a former owner of the company,
right?
And so called you for some assistance to intervene on their affairs. Now, did this company, did they try to reach out to the party that they had originally contracted?
Yes. And they were not getting the results. They weren't getting the answer they wanted quick enough. And that part, I don't know. They were working on it, but the carrier's urgency was different than that individual's urgency. And we don't know what else was on that individual's plate that afternoon. Okay. The load had been delivered. The only thing the carrier was calling about was they wanted to get some extra money for something that they hadn't read. Okay, they ended up getting it anyways because the company decided that they were partially in the wrong, but not as wrong as the carrier, but it didn't matter. They ended up paying the carrier the money on this occasion. That doesn't mean that every time you don't get what you want, you can phone me and you're always going to get your way. That doesn't work because that's been tried before. It doesn't always work. Trust me. If you messed up, you messed up. And remember, I have nothing to do with that company or any other company anymore. I'm out of the game, although I'm still around just out of sense of duty to give back to our community.
Well, I mean, you may be out of the game as far as the day-to-day operations, but we definitely rely on you heavily for your years and years of experience. So I mean, and experience is something that you can't. That's not nothing. There's not an app for that. You
can't. No, it comes from being a graduate of the School of Hard Knocks and a lot of sleepless nights and early mornings.
So I did finally get my information to pop back up. So national spot market rates, even though the content creators are saying that there's in certain markets you're starting to see some spikes on the spot market. Well, nationally, the national spot market rates for dry vans are actually showing that they are 3 cents lower from the previous week, showing an average spot market rate of $2.08 per mile on average for dry vans. Moving over into flatbeds, we're showing that the average rate for flatbeds is actually 2 cents lower from the previous week, coming in at an average of $2.53 per mile. And moving over to the temperature controlled or reefer segment on the spot market, we're showing that the average is actually showing 1 cent lower from the previous week, at coming in at an average of $2.48 per mile. So remember, these are all averages, and if you know how averages are, it's a total number divided by however many input was into it, and that gives you your average. So overall, on the averages, rates seem to have been coming down a little bit, But like I said, there's a lot of content out there and a lot of situations that are saying that the spot market is being affected the by the capacity that is available on the market right now.
I think, Rico, there was a bit of a jump the previous week, and I think the content people were talking about that more than they were last week, because honestly, I think so much of this market is flat right now still, because we still have an overcapacity. As you know, I'm sure you heard the horrible news. Montgomery truck lines, flatbed carrier, 1,000 trucks gone.
Yep.
Now, again, what happens to those 1,000 trucks? And they probably have, I'm guessing they probably have 12 or 1,500 flatbeds or step decks or something. What's going to happen to them? It would be great if all these trucks went to South America or Mexico, got right out of the market. Then we would have the solution. But right now, all that's going to happen is those trucks will get swallowed right back up into the same sea of capacity. So we're not going to really shed that capacity unless those trucks are out of North America.
Well, like I said, they are anticipating with this whole non-domiciled CDL thing, purging of close to 200,000 drivers, and I'm hearing stories. I think there was a story out there showing some of the drivers that in California he went to go renew and couldn't renew his CDL license, and he had his own authority and everything based out of California, of course. But he didn't qualify any longer. So I don't know if those individuals that may have bought equipment that fall into, the smaller guys, the 1 and 2 truck or under 10 truck operations, people that fall under that category, under the non-domicile situation that cannot renew, that's going to be that's going to be a real conundrum to kind of figure out. Are they going to sell that? Are they going to just have to sell that equipment and get out of the business altogether, or how would they maybe proceed or going forward?
Well, they have two choices. So my understanding is that their CDL license is now being tied to their immigration status.
Yes.
So if you're an immigrant and you're here on a temporary permit, and your permit expires on September 30th, and you go in to renew your CDL, which expires on December 31st, they're not going to renew your CDL license. So what happens is if you own your truck outright, you can't drive it. So the only thing you can do is put a driver on it. Well, we all know what that's like for a single operator or even a small fleet of 5 trucks trying to get drivers.
Well, I've seen some stories. I believe it was, I'm not sure if it was Freightways or Freight Caviar, but they're starting to do a lot of investigation on a lot of these companies, and they showed that one company, one location had, and it was like a little shack or something like that, had over 670 companies registered to that address.
This is interesting. Way back before I was born. Okay, 25 years probably before I was born, or maybe even longer. The U.S. decided to regulate the trucking industry. Why? Because there were a couple of reasons. Number one, there were a few reasons. Number one, it was getting out of hand. It was a Wild West, just like we have now. And they needed a semblance of order. They also wanted to make sure that there was a barrier of entry to make sure not just anybody, because you know what, I could go and I could buy a truck in 1928, pull up to your door and say, okay, Rico, I'm going to take your load, and never show up again. So there was not a lot of, they needed to put some things in place. And then they also did realize as the trucking industry was coming into its own, that this is an industry that is going to require a lot of metal, a lot of fuel, a lot of labor. It's got to be protected, and they did. And how it worked under regulation, you had certain routes you could haul on, certain roads you could haul on, certain states you could haul in. Not anybody could haul. You had to get a license, and you had to file your rates with the federal government and the state government. So it was a big rigmarole. Jimmy Carter gets in 1980, and his people say, Jimmy, you got to deregulate this thing. This thing is crazy. It's a boondoggle of red tape, and anybody can, we're going into a change at the shipping yards. We're going in towards something called containerization, and we need free flow. People are paying a lot of money for products based on the freight, because freight costs are so expensive. Because remember, back then, it was $3, $4, $5 a mile to move freight. So Jimmy Carter deregulated the freight industry, and it became wide open. And you had licenses that you may have paid. In some cases, you paid $100 million for those licenses, because you bought different licenses through the years. And you woke up one morning, and that $100 million you had spent during the years buying all these licenses that enabled you to make a fortune were worthless. They were garbage. And these companies all went bankrupt, and it was a whole new world. And we had the evolution of the J.B. Hunts, the Schneiders, the Werners, and all these guys have been around, but they took advantage of the deregulated environment. They did very well. And then you had guys like me, and eventually, years later, as you got into it, guys like you and guys like our listeners get into it. And now it's become the Wild West again. But we have to be very, very careful. Do we want to create a bunch of red tape around this thing all over again? That's the thing we have to watch out for, that we don't repeat previous mistakes. We need a happy medium for regulation.
Yes, and because all of the fraud that is taking place, it took, even though it happened months ago, it took the celebrity chefs getting a truckload of his tequila stolen in order for it to make 60 Minutes, and they did a whole expose on
Yes.
on fraud, and did a whole thing on double brokering, co-brokering, and all the different things that kind of lead us down into the rabbit hole, so to speak. But there has to be, unfortunately, there are a lot of things from a regulatory side that could be done to kind of help mitigate some of the fraud issues that are going on, because there's a lot, and trust me, I'm not one to want to request more government intervention, but as far as this thing is concerned, there are a lot of things I think could be done from a government intervention that could help this whole situation with the fraud situation.
I totally agree, and I think that the fraud and the cargo theft right now,
yes,
are probably two of our biggest enemies. The other third enemy is, of course, ourselves, because you know what it's like. We're all cutting each other's rates out there. So
right.
Those are the three big things. Now, the rate cutting, that's survival of the fittest, and that's what we are in. I don't know what we're going to do about that, but I think if we could get rid of some of the fraud that's out there and some of the cargo theft, I think that the industry would be on much surer footing.
Well, and also another hotbed topic that's been on the discussion was kind of been a little bit floating around, maybe dead on arrival right now, this whole broker transparency issue.
Yes, you know what? I love that one. It makes my blood cringe when I hear it. I just want to explain, and I've been a trucker and a broker, so I understand both sides. I think the broker transparency, it came out of the ashes of something, I think it's called Truth in Leasing. Where it came from, according to our old friend Hank Seaton, who I think is well enough are getting well enough. I think he will be joining us one of these days in the next few weeks or so.
Fingers crossed.
He's had some health problems, but he's doing much better. Where this came from was called Truth in Leasing. And that's when you used to sign up on a lease and you wanted to find out, like, you're supposed to get 25% of the revenue, and people were cheating. That's where this whole broker transparency came from. Brokerage houses all have their own costs. They have their own costs of doing business. And to say to a broker, the brokerage industry, I don't think you should make any more than 10% or 11%. Well, that really depends on a lot of things. It depends on how long the customer takes to pay. That's the biggest thing. A lot of times, I don't think our carriers understand that when a broker takes on these big Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 and Fortune 1000 companies, a lot of times you have to wait for as long as 120 days to get paid. I don't think it's fair, but that's how these guys operate. They're very dictatorial. You want to work for some of these big companies, they'll say, yeah, sure. We pay in 120 days, take it or leave it. That's how we do business. They hang on to their money. So the brokers do take this, they finance it, and they can't work on 10% when it takes them, 3 months, 4 months to get paid. Come on. There's no way they can work on 10%. They have to work on a higher thing to cover their expenses. Now, I realize there are some out there that people think where they make 50 and 60%. It does happen. And I can tell you, there's not a brokerage firm out there in North America throughout this continent that makes 50 or 60% on every load. And there's a lot of loads brokerage companies lose money on. Nobody wants to consider that part. And I've been there lots of times where all of a sudden it's 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, you've got a load, you're getting $1,200, the carrier's doing it for $1,000 or $1,050, you're doing real well on it, or you think you are, and then all of a sudden Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, customer calls, says your truck's not here. I call the carrier, he says, guess what, we just hit a bridge in Chicago. It happens. It's happened to me lots of times. Now all of a sudden 4 o'clock on a Friday, you're looking for a truck in Chicago, and all of a sudden for that $1,100 load, you have to pay $3,000. That happens. So how does the broker deal with that? He pays the $3,000 and he takes almost a $2,000 hit. It's the way it is. He's not asking anybody to pay that. That's coming out of his end.
What happens in a scenario like that, Chuck, where you can't find a truck?
You find one. What you do is you deadhead a truck. You may have to deadhead a truck from Detroit. You may have to deadhead one from Cincinnati.
If it's just a service failure outright, say if the shipper's closing, and they're not going to sit around and wait, but you had a service failure as far as being able to move the load when it was needed to move. What happens? How does that kind of curtains on that?
Well, in some cases, you've signed a contract. The broker has signed a contract with the shipper that if he fails to provide a truck, he gets fined, and there may be a financial punitive arrangement there where he's got to give the customer $5 or $10 or $20 or $30 or $50,000, and the broker pays for that.
Okay.
But people don't understand that part. The brokers also, any of the ones that wanted to stay viable, have had to invest a fortune in technology. I know that Traffic's 35 years ago spent $1 million on a computer. 35 years ago, man. Because there wasn't a system back then for brokerage that we could get off the shelf. We had to get our own written.
And I know we might need to reach out to Tommy Rook as well, because I'm hearing some rumblings that insurance companies are going to be canceling insurance on non-domicile drivers.
Sure, yeah. Because okay, let's look at something. And I'd love to have Tommy on here, and we should ask him to join us one of these days. An insurance company is placing a bet that you are not going to have an incident. They're betting on you not having any incidents. If you can't even have a driver that is legal, they don't want to bet on you. You're a bad bet. They're not putting their money. They're not putting their money on you. So you're really, when you buy insurance, you're betting you're going to have an accident. They're betting you're not. Kind of a reverse bet.
So yeah, so this thing is having a lot of far-reaching ramifications because, like I said, if you got the owner-operator non-domicile that has started his own company and everything like that's really going to put a little conundrum and a monkey wrench in the whole operations. If insurance starts to step in, that's really going to be a fly in the buttermilk.
Well, yeah, you know what, and I have to hand it to the feds in the U.S. They have really done a great job in trying to clean this mess up, and the mess is not new. It's happened over a period of years, and it's out of control now. And I'm not saying I agree with everything that the current administration is doing, but they're doing a hell of a lot more than anybody else has done on this one.
Yeah, it's so far as the trucking front, the transportation industry, that's probably the most activity I can remember since a president change of administrations. This has been the most activity that I can remember.
I can tell you, Rico, this is the biggest one since Jimmy Carter in 1980.
Yeah.
So, and what they're doing is they're trying to make the road safe. They're finally listening. And there's a lot of drivers out there, and we see it all the time. Whether you're driving a big truck or you're driving a car, you see people that don't know how to drive. They come from other countries. And listen, my grandparents all came from other countries. They came from Europe. None of them drove, but still, you come from another country and you've never experienced, especially up here in Canada, you come from a warm climate in Southeast Asia, you've never experienced a Canadian winter. You come here in the summer, you get hold of a CDL through, maybe you went to a really good school, but you took your training in the summer, and all of a sudden they send you out through the Rocky Mountains in the middle of the winter. That's a death sentence for not just you, the guy driving the truck, but it's a death sentence for anybody around you.
Well, and like you say, it's not as you was talking about the Canadian situation with as far as the reciprocity from Canada and Mexico, and you guys were saying that you guys were having some issues up there with some shady schools. But here in the United States, and we talked about this before previously as well, there is a serious problem, whether it be on the local DMVs. You got bad actors that are work for the local DMVs that are helping and assisting and getting people taking bribes and getting money for issuing CDLs. You got people with all this technology that are putting apparatuses on, going in and taking the test with cell phones or something like that with an earpiece in their ear. Got someone else on FaceTime looking at the test as they're taking it and providing you the answers in your ear. So there's a lot of different stuff that's got to be caught and got to be cleaned up when it comes to safety on the safety front, because you got a lot of people that are not qualified to be out here. And I don't understand. Okay, you passed the written portion of it, but how in the hell are you passing the road examination portion of it? Is what I'm
going to guess. Well, you have criminals. So I made a comment the other night. There was a few of us on a post, and I am just wondering. I'm putting this out there. Maybe it's a high time, since the criminal element seems to have infiltrated a lot of these government agencies. Maybe we need to privatize this thing, and then there's more accountability.
That definitely may be an option, because there seems to be no Man, I don't know. I seen one story where one of the workers at the DMV actually put on a disguise and came.
Yes. Yeah, you know what, Rico? It's really funny. It's really funny until one of these guys that ended up with a license drives down the road and kills somebody. There's nothing. This is really serious. You've given somebody a license to operate a piece of equipment they don't understand. This down a crowded highway, and I got to tell you, the roads are a hell of a lot more crowded than they were 50 years ago when I started driving truck.
Absolutely. Well, Chuck, I'm looking at the time. We're gonna get ready to wrap it up, but definitely we might need to follow up with Tommy, because that would be a fascinating discussion to have about how is insurance reacting to all this stuff coming down. That definitely would be a fascinating discussion to have on that front.
I will reach out to Tommy and we'll see if we can get him on for the next show. This is real interesting times we're living in.
You got that right. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we'd love to hear your feedback and commentary on the whole situation as well. Talk to us. Tell us what you think about it down in the comments. We'll be reading. We'll be following up. Chuck, before we get out of here, you want to let the good people know how they can find you and get a hold of you?
Yes. If you need me for anything, please send me an email, chucksnow280@outlook.com. Put your phone number on it, and I'll be back to you, helping you with anything you need. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back. We're in a hole for another week.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, do us a huge favor before you get out of here. Make sure you like, share, and if you would, please subscribe. That helps us out tremendously, gets us out to a bigger audience, bigger algorithm, helps more people see the video. If you find anything entertaining or useful, please share it with someone that may be able to use this information. We greatly appreciate that as well. And with that being said, we want you guys to continue to stay safe out there, stay healthy, stay profitable. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise. We'll talk at the same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch you on the flip flop. God bless.